Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Brian, and I'm here with Allison, and this is Red Chill Cinema. I decided to just go with that, which apparently
Hmm.
someone in the chat said that they always enjoy our takes on popular culture and how it relates to men's issues. Which I guess is what makes
Mm.
it different from the Nerdcast. In case you guys don't know, we brought the Nerdcast back last week, and we're going to try and do it regularly. But the Nerdcast is a little bit broader in terms of its scope, but also, like, if there
Mm.
are things that seem like they're a piece of news, let's say, that's going on in, like, the, game and hobby space that is important because that has something to do with men, then we'll bring it up there. But this is actually a little bit different. Red Chill Cinema is sort of like talking about the
Mm.
construction of stories and thinking about the gender dynamics that are typically at play depending
More
on
about
what.
narrative.
Yeah, it's more about the narrative itself, exactly, and getting into
Hmm.
that. So welcome to Red Chill Cinema, and I hope that you guys stay. Please hit like, subscribe, and feel free to
Bell for
leave us a comment.
notifications.
Yeah,
And I
hit the
think
bell
there's
for
something else that
notifications.
YouTube makes you do that I don't know what to say. It's like there's like multiple steps that you have to jump through or hoops. I think there's a bell now. Maybe there's also
Yeah.
a check that you have to hit, and perhaps you also have to fill out an entire form just to keep getting our notifications. But whatever it is, we really appreciate if you do it.
Mm.
And I would like to also remind people that we are doing our monthly fundraiser to keep these shows going. So please go to feedthebadger.com/projects/badger-media-blitz. And you can also just go to feedthebadger.com and follow the pop-ups. I will be doing some arm twisting at the hour. So please take a moment to go there to feedthebadger.com. Do you actually still have the tapas? Do you remember the tapas that we did?
Uh, Trying to remember where it
I,
was.
I can
I
probably find it for you. But okay, so go to feedthebadger.com, as I know sometimes it's just a matter of taking the time because you don't want to leave our lovely voices and all of our insights to go to the website and ponder. But please do take that time to go to feedthebadger.com. And every bit helps. $5, $10, every bit gets us over the top. And yeah, and I think that it's really critical to keep our voices alive now more than ever as we are seeing the fruits of the current gender policy of our era, shall we say.
Yes.
I think those fruits are, well, I guess fruits are after they flower. Those flowers are flowering and the fruits are ripening, and they smell like stink. So yeah, not very good fruits.
No. So the thing about the tapas is that I don't have it inside of my little soundboard thing because it's kind of like
Okay.
2 minutes
I
long.
actually
But
I
but
actually now have
I probably
go
have
ahead.
the file on my computer, and I think I know where it is. But the other side of the other problem with this is you and I are in Zoom right now, and for whatever reason, um, you won't be able to hear the audio if I play
Mm,
it, right? So it'll play for everyone else. It'll play for the
mm,
audience and me, but you're not going to be able to hear it. And I tried setting Zoom so that it does share audio from my
mm.
PC, but it doesn't seem to do
Yeah,
it. So,
I gotcha. But I think there's also a new version that's got video, which is really cute. And I should find it. And someday we need to actually play
oh,
it.
yeah, yeah. Well, I just need a little bit of prep time for that. That will work for me. So, okay. So with all that said, right?
Mm,
Please, guys, go to feedthebadger.com. We really, really, really need your help, and like it's really the only way that we can keep doing this because we're not monetized. We don't have sponsors, like none of that. So it's all up to y'all. Um,
hmm.
I don't know why Raid Shadow Legends hasn't approached us yet, or Noble Gold, or you know, the My Pillow guy.
We're
Mike
too
Lindell.
radical.
Yeah,
Too
like
radical.
we're too out there.
Mm,
Um, what?
okay. Well, I mean, I think that mostly were just common sense. The whole idea that women might have a hand in this thing called civilization. I know that's astounding, but it might best be true. And you
Yeah.
can't just keep blaming men for all the problems that we see.
Yep.
At some point, you have to consider the people that men do things for in
Yep.
general. And maybe the things that they want might not be the best for continuing to have such a pleasant society as we've had up to this point. All right.
Mm-hmm. All right,
Okay.
so let's get into the articles. So I picked them
All right.
because these are things that are of
Oh,
interest to me as a
yeah.
man. What were you gonna say?
Oh yeah, just a reminder to everybody, if you want to send us a message, go to feedthebadger.com/just the tip.
Mm. Oh yeah.
And a super chow, so we get the benefit of your funds, and you get the benefit of a message that YouTube doesn't poke at, shall we say, and maybe
Hopefully.
decide based on its own arcane measure to yoink into the bowels of censorship. It's
Mm-hmm.
a little
And I have the super chows open on my
purgatory.
phone, so I will catch them.
Mm,
All right. So the first story I want to look at. First things first. I didn't mean to confuse anyone, but I was not talking about Conan O'Brien, the nighttime talk show host, when I mentioned that Conan was canceled for toxic masculinity. I know it's hard to believe because we all know how manly Conan O'Brien is, but no, we're not talking about him. We're speaking of the pulp book, I guess you could say, pulp book hero or protagonist from the Conan series of pulp novels. You guys might know him as Conan the Barbarian because that's sort of like the mainstream, way that we know the character. So that's the first thing, and I just wanted to clear the air, and we'll start with this one. So there was, just as a piece of news here, I thought you guys would like to know, there was a plan to give Conan the Barbarian his own series on Amazon. And
ooh.
what Amazon, I guess, was trying to do, essentially was it was trying to compete with HBO Max's Game of Thrones. And um, they were looking at doing two shows to do that. So they actually were doubling up on the content. One was Conan the Barbarian, and the other one
Mm.
was the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power, which is out now. So this is from a few some time ago. And I'll just read the article. Amazon could have Conan the Barbarian as a hard-hitting reply to Game of Thrones before it was scrapped due to some pretty messed up issues. If the name sounds familiar to you, then yes, this series was set to follow the same source material that was followed by Arnold Schwarzenegger and John Milius in 1982, in their movie, which was critically and commercially acclaimed. However, a lot of people say, and I'm just pointing this out, that movie, the Conan movie from the early 80s, was it took a lot of liberties at the time. But so, compared to the source material. But that's okay. I get it. It was a long time ago, and they were probably working within a number of different limits. But unfortunately, the project moved to the hands of Netflix as Amazon Studios had found toxic masculinity in the project. It was reported that Amazon Studios cleverly wanted to tap every audience in the fantasy genre by introducing shows for both family audiences and for adult audiences. While The Lord of the Rings was slated to look after the family zone, Conan was supposed to lead the mature front, which unfortunately never made it to the finishing line. So what exactly caused Amazon Studios to scrap Conan the Barbarian? Conan the Barbarian
Mm.
is a gritty comic book series that brought sword and sorcery culture to mainstream American comics. It was reported in 2018 that Amazon is planning to work on the character of the Barbarian before it was soon moved over to Netflix. So apparently, Netflix might be doing something with the property now, but I have very low expectations regardless. The whole event resurfaced after the YouTube channel Midnight's Edge posted a video on this. The founder of the channel, Andre Einherjar, explained the whole matter that Amazon's initial planning was to capture the entire fantasy market by targeting both mature and family audiences. Unfortunately, the mature audience was planned to be captured with the Wheel of Time instead of the Conan series, which they have already done a show. I think there's a series or something for a Wheel of Time, the Wheel of Time, which is way more female centered. You know, I've never read the Wheel of Time. I don't know much about it, but I understand that I guess it's considered a more female centric story. And so they have tossed out Conan and they've replaced it with Wheel of Time because Conan apparently is too toxically masculine. And what my thinking on this is that this isn't even really a problem with Amazon. I think this is a problem with the culture of entertainment, full stop. Like there is almost no content that exists, with very few exceptions, that are targeted like with men as the intended audience, much less an audience that might, like, you know, maybe they're not specifically making it for men, but if it's mostly men that watch, they're okay with it, you know. But no, I mean, men as a target audience are explicitly excluded, and it is mainly because, like, I think most of the people who run these are like showrunners, or they're, you know, they seem to be women, like almost all of them. And I guess they just hate stuff that men like. I don't know. So I'm
No, that's pretty interesting. I just looked up like the Ring of Power, and apparently they're alleging that it's being review bombed.
yeah.
I guess that's what they say when people just don't like something that they're supposed to like. I mean, if you put these initiatives into every movie, then you can always say, or every movie or TV show, these what they call woke initiatives into every movie or TV show, you can always say when people reject it that it's being review bombed because of their racist, sexist, misogynist, oh my, you know. But I actually don't. Do you have any information on how well Rings of Power did?
I don't think it's so, like, there's a lot of deception around the numbers. So you know, they've been, it's sort of like Captain Marvel, like there's been a lot of obfuscation, so you can't tell, like, if every review is being counted, if what the actual ratio is. So but I think that the last time I looked, Rings of Power on Rotten Tomatoes or Metacritic, I can't remember which one, was doing pretty good with critics, because of course it does. The critics are paid shills, you know, they give it good reviews because they want to continue to get access to exclusive, you know, trips and swag and whatever. So, you know, they can just be ignored. And then there's fans. And I think that with or you know, people who are interested in the show being good and successful. And I think that when it comes to, this is a unique fandom, the Tolkien fans, because they're invested in this story going well before there were film or even animated adaptations. Like, they read the books and they love the books, right? And they're a very, very they're very, very suspicious of Hollywood interpretations of anything. I mean, I remember that they got pissed with Peter Jackson over some changes that he made. And I mean, obviously they didn't boycott him or anything like that because it wasn't as severe, and because Peter Jackson did not attack the fan base and, you know, or blame them for whatever. He just sort of was like, yeah, I know I took Tom Bombadil out of the story, or whatever it is that they didn't, they weren't thrilled with, right?
Well,
But
Tom Bombadil is a bit of a digression, I think.
yeah, but again, they're like, well, he's in the book. Or the Barrow Whites, they're not in the story either, right? There's a couple things that he, you know, just sort of like, I guess he just wanted to try, because originally he was going to do the whole thing as one movie, which would have required a tremendous amount of compression. but he didn't think he was going to get the budget for more than one. And then when he proposed it to the producers or the guys who signed the checks, they said, "No, man, you have to do 3 movies." And so it was only because the producers felt so strongly about the project that why am I Peter Jackson? It was only because of that Peter Jackson was able to do this as a trilogy, and then even include on top of all that like the extended edition, which is the only edition anyone should watch. But what my point is that the fans were so hardcore that even if you made these little changes that for the most part are forgivable for Peter Jackson, they will point it out, and they'll try, because they want people to, I think, want to enjoy the story in its purest form. So they may say it's probably better if you just read the books, right? And because even if the film nailed everything, some things won't translate as well to film, which is why I think that some stuff got left out. But also, it's probably good to go read the books anyway, because they're good books. That's like where it all came from. But the thing about Rings of Power is that it's just making shit up. And it's just, it has no regard for any of the lore. And the fact is, there isn't much you can do to work around what Tolkien has created, because he's so thorough. So like everything is all of the history is written, everything. So if you can't change it because the fans will know. And I think that the only people who are probably watching Rings of Power are people who have no investment in Tolkien's work, and they're just like, I just want to be entertained, and they just sit there and turn their brain off for however long an episode is. And they don't care about any of that stuff. But I don't think that there's a lot of those. Because they could be watching, Game of Thrones, whatever it is, Dragon, because I understand that show is a lot better. So, but the point, the other, so the thing that I wanted to get at though with Conan, Conan the Barbarian is not it's one of the earliest swords and sorcery stories. It's a pulp book, all of the books that were made, and it was basically about a man who is not constrained by any systems, right? He's not like underneath, like the period he's in is savage. There's no laws, there's no roads, there's no civilization except for the occasional like cult leader or tyrant. And he comes across them, and usually it's not because he feels a sense of like wanting to like do the right thing, but it's usually because they cross him in some way, or they try to enslave him or something, and then he goes and gets his revenge. And I think that what Robert E. Howard was sort of doing with that was he was like exploring this concept of absolute freedom, which is what Conan is supposed to be about. And he also happens to be like the most alpha, the strongest and everything, and like the women can't resist him, and it's all but that's what it's supposed to be. Like that's the fantasy in a way. Maybe in a world like that, that's not really such an unbelievable thing. Like if there's one guy, and he's the toughest, meanest like dude around, and he will, and only if people get in his way. Like mostly if you stay out of his way, you're gonna be okay. But like if you get in his way, he will take you out. He doesn't care. I think that, and this is the thing, like they're calling this toxic masculinity, but I think in the specific context, it's probably something that makes sense. But also, I think women would be attracted to that. I don't think that it's such a ridiculous thing to write them, like as not attracted to that. Does that make sense?
Well, he also he has a good points. Like he's loyal to his friends, and he usually just plays evil onto evil, shall we say? So he's not like a Christ type hero.
No, he's not.
Yeah, he's much more, I guess, in the Bronze Age mold of a hero. than the Iron Age. But that is what it is, right? He's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily a bad guy. And it's, I guess, a story, and not even really a story about pure force, because he's usually up against powers that are greater than him. So it's more like grit
Mm-hmm.
and determination,
Mm-hmm.
and the willingness to survive. But it's just like, the other thing that I read is actually the uh Conan was meant to, in some ways, also defy pulp tropes.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of pulp tropes were, I mean, they were, they could have like ultra violence in the same way, but they were usually, say, had a little bit more of a good and evil or good versus evil dichotomy in them. So
Mm,
because, but the characters in them were often from modernity or the modernity of the time. So like the Shadow is the, or
mm,
Solomon Kane. Those are two pulp characters that come to mind. And Solomon Kane was, he fought evil. He was basically hunting, demons and witches and stuff. And
mm-hmm,
so that meant that he had like a, not just like a highly refined moral code based on his faith, but also um he was like, it was actually creating problems for him, right? And then
mm,
when it came to, was the other character I mentioned, Solomon Kane and the Shadow. Yeah, like they were crime fighters in a sense. So, but Conan wasn't really.
mm,
I don't think so. Um,
mm,
so
hmm.
it was almost like he was on the verge of being like, I don't want to say like an animal, but there was like a savagery, right? That I think
Yeah.
that
Well, if I if you look a quote from the uh but the proudest kingdom of the world was Aquilionia, reigning supreme in the dreaming west. Hither came
Mhm.
Conan the Cimmerian, black-haired, sullen-eyed, sword in hand, a thief, a reaver, a slayer, with gigantic melancholies and gigantic mirth, to tread the jeweled thrones of earth under his sandaled feet. So, I mean, even Conan, and I remember this, had his introspective moments and some depth to his character. But of course, it's all just toxic masculinity, because it's just
Mhm.
he's has adventures, women like him, which they would,
Yeah,
by the way.
he's
We
masculine.
can't acknowledge that.
Yeah, I know, I know. And here's the thing, a little bit more on the backstory of how this show got canceled, which I think is particularly interesting. Um, what was also mentioned is that the person who introduced the idea of the show, so a man came forward, said, and went to Amazon, and he was like, I got a great idea. Let's adapt Conan the Barbarian. The thing is, it could be done without too big of a budget, right? There's a lot of advantages if you just on the logistics level, because if you look at the original film from 1982, you can see that like they were working with a small budget. So
Mm,
and a small budget in the 80s probably can't get you the same kind of effects budget that the same size budget could get you today. And I'm sure that there's great ways to work around it, and that they could probably get a much bigger budget than the one from 1982. But he pitched this idea, and then he got Me Too'd. And
mm,
then, like, they fired his staff. They did a complete
mm,
makeover. And then they hired a woman to take his job named Jennifer Sulky, who saw the project as toxic masculinity and opted to trash the project, which is a decision he harshly criticized.
mm.
And
Okay, did the Me Too, did it have any merit? Was there, or is it just like the
we don't know.
generic
It came under the grasp of the Me Too movement, and he got
uh
fired. So that's all we know. We don't know how legitimate any
mm,
of it is. I mean, like, if you think about it, I don't know, like, how hard is it to get, if you're not like filing a criminal case? Because
mm,
I think that that's, if it's really serious, then you've filed a report with the cops or something. But if it's just like I don't like the way he spoke to me that day, or I don't know. I don't know. All we know is that
Mm,
Me Too was used. He got fired, so not arrested. He didn't go to jail. He was fired from his job, and they gave his job to a woman who immediately went in and gutted the whole thing and did basically
mm,
said she wanted to do something else.
mm,
And based on this pattern that I've seen in lots of other industries, like gaming, animation, that this kind of stuff seems to be happening more and more and more. So,
mm.
like women, some women come forward, they make an allegation, the Me Too thing. The company, which doesn't want any of the bad PR that comes with, the fact that there's someone in their company that was, Me Too'd, they just fire everyone that's involved, and then they hire new people, and those new people almost always happen to be women, and
Mm.
they change everything. So to me, it's sus, but again, we can't confirm this right now. But this is what they're saying, that he lost his job because of you, and then the woman who took over essentially opted to trash the project as toxic masculinity.
Specifically, not toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
So we can't criticize any of these identities, but masculinity is up for grabs in terms of criticism, and also canceling just for existing, because they, like this toxic masculinity nonsense, they only think masculinity is toxic because they can't
Mm-hmm.
associate any positive qualities for masculinity. As of now, I've been arguing over toxic masculinity for something like a decade, and I have yet to hear people who use the term identify positive aspects of masculinity, which are as strongly associated with masculinity as the negative things that they associate with masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
It just, yep, it's only toxic. That's literally, they're talking about masculinity is toxic, period, because they can't
Mm-hmm.
identify anything positive about it. So yeah, this is well, that's unfortunate because a Conan remake might have been really cool.
I would have loved to have seen it if it was done well. To be fair, that if I heard that they were going through with the project, I'd be really fucking suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
But and I still like I heard they're working on a Red Sonja, and again, I like that movie when it came out in the '80s. I thought Brigitte Nielsen, did a good job, but I wouldn't want to see a modern interpretation of that. Like, this is no way. But like, whatever. So this is the guy, I think, who originally made the Conan the Barbarian pitch, and they quoted him as saying, "Where others saw the next Game of Thrones in Ryan Condal's Conan scripts." Okay, so this isn't that guy, but Jennifer Salke saw only toxic masculinity. As such, Ryan Condal was fired, Conan was scrapped, and Jennifer Salke picked The Wheel of Time to be Amazon's more adult-oriented Game of Thrones replacement, although she made sure to make it even more female-centric than it already was, just to be sure there would be absolutely no toxic masculinity.
Mm.
Now, about Wheel of Time, I don't know. I never read it. I don't know anything about it. I just presume that, like, I mean, I don't know. Some stories, they're just not for me. So I'm just like, I don't know. That looks a little. I mean, I would have been interested, I guess, if it was like sold as like something that boys could get into, but I
Mm.
wouldn't want them to change the story for that. So I don't know if that makes any sense. But like, have you ever read Wheel of
Mm.
Time?
Uh I read the premise and I'm like, yeah, this is just gonna annoy me.
Okay. Well, if you guys know anything about Wheel of Time, and maybe you've read it or something,
I
um,
probably should I probably should read more fantasy, since that's what I'm writing.
uh huh.
Like a science more, but I've never, I don't know. I know this is gonna sound really weird, but I've always sort of been drawn more to women fantasy and science fiction writers, because there's a quality in a lot of male science fiction and fantasy writers where they seem to just despise um men's sexuality in a way.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how to describe it. It's like this it's like this quality that a lot of them seem to have, where they always have a scene where some woman just has this utter meltdown because some guy gives her eyes or something. And
Hmm.
like this is, and I'm not saying that this doesn't happen with modern feminist writers now in Hollywood, but it seems that also there's a lot of geeky guys who'd like to write stuff that is dismissive or contemptuous of male sexuality.
Mm.
They might be
That
feminist men too.
yeah, that's kind of what it sounds like because
And that turns me off so
hmm
bad.
hmm
And for some reason, female authors aren't as inclined unless they're feminist. And even feminist female authors often don't write from their feminism. They write much lower south, shall we say.
hmm hmm
Mm. That tends to be more authentic to what women actually are interested in. They're a lot more honest in that regard. Feminists tend to be a lot more honest about their desires when they are writing and when they are creating Tumblr pages in which they are espousing their desire to be dominated by men, etc., and their Gorean lifestyle.
yeah,
It's interesting, but
yeah.
I'm waffling here.
It's
So I
kind
never
of
read Wheel of Time series.
yeah.
I know it sounds like I'm a total bigot, but a lot of the writing of male nerds I cannot stomach.
Is Wheel
Oh,
of Time written by men?
I'm so sorry for saying
Oh
that.
no, it's okay. I think that
Yes, it
you're
is.
okay. I think that is there sex in those books? But
I don't know.
oh okay. I don't know either. I guess what I was thinking is that it's probably because the the men that write about those things are kind of
Hmm.
disgusted and ashamed by their own sexuality. And I
Yes.
think that even like normal men that are not like that, it's not that they're prudish, but I think that they're not as interested in getting into like all of the detail, so it's more like you know how when you're reading like a steamy romance novel,
Hmm.
they describe the like every stage of the sexual act, and
Hmm.
they'll use like flowery language, so they're not being like overt, right?
Hmm.
They'll say, but they do spend a good amount of time on that, and I think it's because I guess the women, that's what they're reading it for, right? And I
Hmm.
think that that might extend to other kinds of storytelling. And I think that men in general, they're actually probably a little bit less interested in the literature of boning than women are. And I think that's really what it is. It's kind of like you watch an old Hollywood film and you know there's going to be a sex scene, and they almost always, unless they really want to spend time there, they will just like, suggest it is happening. Maybe you get
Hmm.
a flash of nipple and then it cuts to black, and then they just go on to the next scene because they want to move on with the rest of the plot. And I
Yeah, well,
think that's
that's really old Bollywood, because in the 70s and the 80s they were even more
mm-hmm.
uh they're more I guess sexual than they are
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And actually sort of in a lot of ways like just unabashedly and unshamedly so. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, continue with your thought.
No, no, no. That's basically the end of my thought. I was just saying that I think that men, when they are writing or directing uh sex in films, they if the unless the sex is an important part of the plot, they will usually just show enough to like get everyone on the same page. Maybe they're
Mm,
working with against the rating system, and they're like, look, I don't want an R rating for this, so this is how I'm going to handle it. Could be something like that, but I don't know. I think that men narratively look at sex differently than women.
Well,
Um,
maybe. And it isn't necessarily really sex that's the issue. And it's
right.
not all men who write science fiction or fantasy. Although, like I
Hmm.
said, I find it
But
more with men who write fantasy.
they're
It's this,
they're
like, once I hear about a guy writing a matriarchy, I'm like, oh,
oh yeah
oh, God. Oh, I know where this is going. And usually I just pass because I really don't want to. I mean, it's really off-putting to sit there and just watch this condemnation of male sexuality and male identity, which is usually tied in with the matriarchy, but not always. I did read one that was interesting, and just sit there with that as a person who actually likes both. You know,
hmm
it just is. It's just something that's just so grating that I just move on. I don't think that the Wheel of Time series is something that, if you miss it, you're gonna have a gaping hole in your life. you
yeah
know
yeah
but I mean, I haven't felt it. Maybe we'll have some irate people saying, no, the Wheel of Time series is a foundational text of Western narrative tradition, and if you have not read it, I can no longer consider your opinion to be valid. You are a flawed human being, and you should be silenced. But
yeah
for the most part, I haven't really missed the absence of this show in my life. But this is a digression, I'm pretty sure.
yeah. I think
um
it's time for you to
uh
twist some arms.
yeah, actually, because nobody has gone to feedthebadger.com/projects/badger-media-blitz and put anything into the hat. So please, guys, please do this. It is sort of nerve-wracking when we get to the end of the month, and we need to make sure to pay our bills, make sure that we are able to continue this work into the next month. And that only happens if you take the time to go there and put whatever you can help us with into the hat for this month. So once again, that's feedthebadger.com/project/badger-media-blitz. I'd really appreciate it, because it's always fun at the end of the month to be staring into that abyss of, oh, will we exist next month? Let's
Yeah.
find out. Stay tuned. So once again, feedthebadger.com/project/badger-media-blitz. All right, Brian.
All right, so I got a super chow from
Yep.
Amasang for $5, and he says, "To be fair, I am still kind of miffed that Jackson depicted Sauron as a giant fiery eye, when in the books he had made a new body for himself. As I recall, Sauron tortured Gollum personally, and recalled he still only had 9 fingers." Um, yeah, perhaps that's true. I think that he was. The thing is, if you present him as complete and human, I think it would confuse viewers, and they wanna you instead. I think what they were trying to do is sell this idea that he could be back very soon.
Mm.
Needs is the ring. So I don't know. Maybe it was incorrect. Um, I don't. It doesn't really bother me that much. As I said, like when it comes to the Jackson films, I was pretty forgiving. But I think that he was. The main difference is that Jackson was trying to be as accurate as possible, while also, more importantly, grasping the essence of the story that was told, so that that was communicated. And I think that he did an excellent job. All
Mm.
right. So, according to reports, the project, this is still on Conan the Barbarian, is actively under work with Netflix backing it up. Netflix is not only working with a live action series, but also with some animated adaptations. Recently, the producer of the shows, Frederick Malmberg, announced that the show is in the writing stage. With Conan, I'm happy to say that we are writing. We are in development, which means we basically work with a writer who has written the first draft of the pilot of the series and then a season overview. With the development proceeding, it will not be long before the show hits the platform, and it will also raise a friendly rivalry with another fantasy, Witcher, which also streams on Netflix, which I have not seen. I don't know anything about The Witcher. I know that there are video games and books and all that, and they're very popular, but I don't know anything about it. Um, I guess The Witcher is really just Elric, which is an old pulp book from a while ago. But so they're not doing Conan, too toxically masculine. Netflix might be doing it, but this would be my suggestion. because I think that if you're gonna do like this kind of story, you need the right people involved. And right now, the one person that I can think of that will be best equipped to do this is actually an animator who has a bunch of like cartoons under his belt. I think that he could do this because he has in so many ways captured the essence of what a really good Conan show should have. Like I frankly think that there doesn't even need to be much dialogue in a good Conan show. So my suggestion would be Gennady Tchaikovsky. And in case you guys don't know who Gennady Tchaikovsky is, one of the things that's really great about this guy is that he has remained unapologetically who he is. And I don't know how he manages to survive in Hollywood without somebody me tooing him or trying to destroy his career or anything. Because all of his cartoons, with a couple of exceptions, have been like very masculine oriented. So Gennady Tchaikovsky gave us the Powerpuff Girls, which have you ever seen Powerpuff Girls, Allison?
Oh yeah, I used to watch it when I was a kid.
Yeah, so he created them.
That before time.
And yes, and uh he made an episode of the Powerpuff Girls where they fight a feminist bank robber. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
And
a feminist who was basically just self-aggrandizing that wanted money and used feminism to excuse her bullshit
yes.
and try to get out of the consequences of her actions. So
Yes.
basically most feminists that I've ever met.
Yeah, the usual. And he was able to do that and critique that, and at the time I guess we either we missed it or we didn't care or we agreed. And I think that it, that it was great because he had female characters. They were some of the most popular on this show, and he was talking about stuff that no one else had the balls to talk about on a cartoon for kids. So he gave us that. He gave us Dexter's Lab, which is I think it's basically in the same, like, what would you say, in the same ballpark in terms of age group and stuff, but maybe Dexter's Lab was a little bit more oriented towards boys because it was about science and, had a lot of fun stuff in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he did the Clone Wars, which was like this a short series of cartoons based in the Star Wars universe that came out between Attack of the Clones and the Revenge of the Sith. And people say that that's like the best thing that came out of Star Wars, like the thing that he made, And
yeah, I didn't watch a lot of that, but what I did watch, I did like.
Yeah, it's just he's just a genius when it comes to not just animation, but the way he tells stories through animation. So like he did, like I mentioned, the Clone Wars, and there are some episodes where there's almost no dialogue. He also did Samurai Jack, which again, absolutely beloved franchise. And again, not a lot. Like there's some episodes that have dialogue, but he only, it's like he has this minimalist approach to doing things, but all of the action and adventure is made with children in mind, but it's not but it doesn't hold their hand. It's not childish, right? It's very exciting. It's action packed. And I think he was able to cut loose very recently with a new show called Primal. And when I watched Primal, I watched the first season, so I have to go back and watch the rest of it. But when I watched Primal, again, no dialogue, at least from what I remember, right? And it's like a guy, and he meets his dinosaur friend, and then they basically go on adventures together. You can just put it that way. And I saw that, and I was like, this guy could do Conan the Barbarian. Like
I remember Primal's good. Although technically, since the form of paternal investment for dinosaurs, or the form of parental investment for dinosaurs, is paternal. Did you guys know that? It was actually, what would happen is, for example, T-Rexes, the female would lay a clutch of eggs, leave it with the male she mated with, and then go find another male. and he would take care of the offspring. So the Tyrannosaurus, and I know it's probably they think it's a female because that's the way people think, but the Tyrannosaurus is would have been most likely male. So it's not just a very masculine show. It's also, I mean, if you think about it, if you squint, it could be about male bonding, like two
Yeah.
fathers, two single dads. Oh, actually, no, they lost all their kids, didn't they?
I believe they lost their families. Yeah.
Mm,
They both did. That was what brought them together.
mm-hmm.
So they're basically fathers
Yeah.
without families, right?
Well, I think that the T-Rex in the story is
A female?
uh is female.
Yeah,
Um,
I think you're right.
in reality, she would have been he, but I think in the story they intended that we think of her if it is a her, which is
Hmm.
fine too. You know,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's fine. Um,
I think it's cooler if it actually abided by the canon of archaeology and history,
hmm hmm
as opposed to just gender swapping the T-Rex.
Yeah,
I'm being a
not
bit
not
silly.
not something I thought I would find myself agreeing with, but
Mm.
yeah, gender swapping the T-Rex. Anyway, so
Okay.
it's so yeah, those are my thoughts on Conan. Uh,
It,
you
you know
know,
what's really fascinating is they could do a Conan that really appeals to women and completely authentic to the subject matter. And I don't understand why women seem to be so adverse to admitting that that is something they find attractive.
well, I think that you're right. I think that like we've always had films and stories that may have been made by men, which because it's made by men, it includes men's like tastes and sensibilities, and
Mm-hmm.
it becomes popular with men. But that doesn't mean that women are pushed away. I think that women do like to see stories about men like
Doing shit.
doing man shit. Yeah. So
Yeah,
like
it's well, I mean, it's like saying that men are pushed away from bikini contests because they feature women. Like,
yeah, it
really?
it doesn't it doesn't
No,
no, it
it
doesn't
doesn't
really make
compute.
sense, right? So they might say like the opposite of a, let's say, because I'm going to be talking about James Bond next. So a James Bond film is essentially made for men in a way, like in terms of the general structure. Man on a mission, he has to
Mm,
save the country, save the world, save the queen, whatever it is he's doing. And other men are watching that because they are attracted to this romantic idea of like, going out and
can I can I interrupt for a second?
yeah, yeah.
Or maybe I should wait till you're done. Because I know where this is going with its condemnation of James Bond, and I don't think these people have actually watched the original James
No, no,
Bonds.
no, no. We can
Because
get into that.
there is some definite subversive crap going on with the original
Yeah,
James
yeah.
Bond,
Oh,
especially
for
the
sure.
first one. Okay, but anyway, keep
It's
going.
absolutely no. They don't know what they're talking about, but they do this after every Bond film, if not after every Bond. So once a Bond
Mm,
retires, they start talking about this crap. But they've always done this. So I know they don't. They're It's not that I don't think they're serious. I just know that this is just like more of the same manipulation. But
mm-hmm.
the thing is that I think that Bond movies are made with because they're made by men, they appear to have men in mind for the audience, but it's not really the case. That's why there are women in every Bond film, and I mean going all the way back to the beginning, because there's like they have the man that the other
Mm,
men want to be like, right? They look at
mm-hmm.
Bond and they say, I want to be like that guy, right? He's super cool. He's well dressed. The ladies like look at him, right? He gets their attention. It's
Mm-hmm.
But like there, it's not like a, what would you call it, like a power fantasy or something, because the men don't actually believe they're him. but it's more like,
Mhm.
man, I need to change the way I carry myself and the way that I talk, and I want to be like that guy, right? But
Mhm.
women watch that too, and again, they don't watch it for the same reasons that men do. I
Yes,
think
they
that
watch it they
Go ahead.
watch it for some of the same reasons that men watch a bikini contest or like
Yeah,
a wet car or a wet
wet
t-shirt
t-shirt. Well,
or
but
car wash, it's like
maybe or even like something subtler, like
or
a
rollerblade
sexy
or
rom-com or
roller.
something.
What is that
No,
that sport roller roller derby with the
roller
women?
derby with, yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
roller derby.
Yeah, where the women are skating around in mini skirts, kicking the crap out of each other.
Hmm.
That's that. There's so the problem with this society is it has such a contempt for women's desire, and I know that sounds really strange, but I look at what feminists tell women. First of all, they tell women one thing, and then they go on Tumblr and they talk about their experiences being strapped to a table and paddled.
Yeah.
But it's like they have such contempt for the fact that what men are doing, especially like with James Bond and Conan, the way they're behaving in these stories, and both of those characters aren't as toxically masculine as they think they are. Conan has his moments of introspection. For example, there's one scene, I can't necessarily get you all the characters, but he bursts into like the harem of some wizard that he's been fighting. And there's this woman who just sort of reclines back on her couch and says some pithy statement like, it's hard to be a woman in a man's world. And he says, yeah, try being a man in the man's world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, it's like there's he has his moments of
Hmm.
being wry and witty, and introspective. And James Bond is definitely like there's some elements to the originals that definitely they don't capture with this, oh, it's toxic masculinity. But here's the other thing. What's wrong with men being men and women being attracted to that? It
Right.
doesn't necessarily mean that men have to be thrown away when they're not infinitely strong, but maybe it's okay for women to be able to experience desire for what they desire. And this is one of the things that bothers me about feminism. There are a lot of things that bother me about feminism and the kind of anti-male conservatism that aren't this, and this is maybe more of a minor issue. But boy, do feminists really hate what women desire in men.
Hmm.
They just despise it. And at the same time as they despise it, it's almost like this jealous bucket of crabs behavior that they have.
Yeah.
It's like they want to keep it for themselves, and other women, yeah, they don't get to enjoy it, and they should feel bad. And it's this hypocrisy, this inability to just enjoy being human. You know what I mean? And I'm not like a huge a person who's like necessary a woman who's necessarily like the typical woman, right? Far from
Sure.
it.
Sure. Sure.
And I've been part of that kind of crowd. I've been like to MMA events, and I've seen the women and the men in those kind of events, which are the closest to, I guess you would say, the toxic masculinity ideal and what it attracts. And and that world is definitely not the world that I run in, shall we say. But
Yeah.
at the same time, as can they not enjoy can these women not enjoy being attracted to the masculinity that they're attracted to?
Right.
you know
Yeah, which is like what was usually going on with these Bond films. That's why, like, whenever they
yeah.
changed actors, like, it was basically like the women who got to decide if it was a good choice or not, because they wanted a man that they thought was sexy. And so that, I mean,
Yes.
yeah, that's like, how
Just
else can
do
you can't sell the character if you
just do
cast,
a Conan
you
the
know
Barbarian with the sexy male actor, and then
yeah, just
everything is
exactly.
fine.
Just get like a sexy male actor
And
with
some
that's
sexy female actors
totally
who just enjoy being
shredded
human
up,
beings.
and yeah, get some sexy women that have those Frank Frazetta curves, and
Just push
I'm
the whole
saying,
Pulp Fiction thing
lean all the way into it. Just like
into it.
get
Yeah.
the curviest women wearing as little as possible. Get a big ass beast of a man You know, they don't even like. I mean, it'd be nice if they were decent actors, but like we can work around all that. We can dub them, like whatever, right? And
Just go right into
yeah, just
the
dub.
depths of the primal human id.
Yeah,
Anyway.
exactly. We'll just have like Michael Fassbender like dub Conan, and we'll make it work. But and I think that's, you know, in all honesty though, I think that that's enough, and I think that there's too much of a desire from people in Hollywood to make everything like deep and serious, which almost always just means, you know, politically conscious and feminist, right? And like that's where all this rhetoric comes from.
Does Conan really need to be analyzed through a feminist lens?
No,
or any lens?
No.
Really?
He just needs
Can't people just enjoy themselves?
Yeah, he just
I know
needs
that
to
we
fight
analyze
and kill
stuff,
people, but yeah, but like what the thing is that that's what Conan was known for. That's what made him popular. Then we should analyze. We can analyze that and be like, okay, what is it about this that people like?
Yeah,
you know, and I think it's something primal, and I think that there is something about it that's appealing.
There's something. There is something very appealing about it because it is like it's an expression of the primal aspects of human experience.
Yeah, and it's not just violence; it's also the sex.
Yeah, it's both. You know,
it's the indulgence, right? He like drinks heavy, he eats big meals. You know, it's like he's just living, right, for every day.
Great mirth and great meloncholly. He's living his life.
Yeah,
with gusto, which is, you know, it's its own kind of philosophy. It's hedonism. The original hedonism was or Epicureanism was this idea of enjoying life's pleasures for their own sake, and usually simpler pleasures, or at least with great gusto. But this idea that everything, like you were saying, complex. I actually find that what we're doing now is so it doesn't allow people to really enjoy being human. And you know what I mean?
I do. And it's not really as complex as they think, right? No. I think they use the word, but I don't think it applies. It's actually kind of childish. And
well, I was having this argument over Rocky. Well, not even much of a argument. Somebody was talking about or shared a video of Stallone explaining Rocky, because I believe he wrote the screenplay, right? And somebody was saying, oh, like, why can't we have movies like this? And another person was saying, well, what do you mean simple moral stories are just basically simple conservative messages? And I'm like, have you watched Rocky?
Yeah, right.
Like it is not. Well, first of all, there may be a moral message, and the moral message is better yourself. If you have an opportunity, take it and do everything you can to make yourself into a better person. But there's also this kind of human connection that happens in Rocky between Rocky and Adrian.
It's so well done. It's Rocky and Adrian, it's Rocky and Mickey, it's Rocky and Paulie, like all of the characters, and they're all like kind of broken. That's one of the things that's so great about it, because all the characters in that first film, they're all broken in some way, and then they find each other, and then like, you know, through the desire to essentially like help each other out, they sort of become like a family. It's really, really good. Like, I mean, I think I think Rocky is a great movie.
Well, I mean, and what is the moral? The moral is do your best when opportunity knocks. It's not just opportunity. You also have to dig deep, and you do it for yourself, and you do it for the people around you. What the hell is wrong with that message? And then the connection between Rocky and Adrian, it is actually really impactful, in my opinion.
It's a very sweet relationship, because normally in the average movie, if there's like a love interest, it's usually a woman, and the woman doesn't have much about her other than she's beautiful, I guess. But in this movie, and this is like, I thought it was so well done, Adrian looks like a plain woman. She doesn't look, she's not gorgeous, she's not intimidating, and she has problems. She has like problems with anxiety.
Severe social
Yeah, like
anxiety.
severe social anxiety, right? She barely speaks. She's like, works with pets probably because it's like the best way for her to feel like she can get close to some other living organism. And Rocky, he's I don't want to say he's too dumb to see that, but it doesn't stop him. So he goes and visits her every day, and he's really nice to her. She knows
He always
it,
brings some stupid
right?
joke.
Yeah, he tells a stupid joke and like all of that, and but it's because he's into her. And the only reason why that would be the case is, again, he's in this little neighborhood, and so he sees this woman every day, and she's local, and they end up going on a date because he knows her cousin Polly. But like, it's all about normal people. All of them have problems. All of them have some issue of some kind, physical, mental, whatever, and they're all underdogs. And so like their whole thing is trying to make something of themselves. And I mean, that's what, like you said, that's what the film is about. It's basically go the distance, and it doesn't matter if you win. The point is that you made that effort. You tried, right?
Yeah, he doesn't even win. And the thing is with Adrian, he's really he's not like persistent as in aggressive, persistent.
Or stocky. No,
he's just persistent as in he's not going to let her descend into her little shell and cut and push everyone out. And the funny thing is that I think people stereotype Rocky as not talking, but what was interesting to me is when the first time I watched that movie, and I had basically never seen it, but I'd heard a lot of the jokes and stereotypes, it actually surprised me how much he talks.
Yeah.
Like he talks constantly.
Yeah. It's like how he deals with his own nerves.
Yeah,
he fills the air.
Yeah, he fills the air, and it's obvious that he's doing that. So he's got his own like issues and his own self-doubts, and like you're saying, it's broken people coming together and supporting each other in doing something great, and it's not even winning, it's just enduring.
Exactly, it's basically doing your best.
And it's freaking hilarious that this person's like, yeah, Rocky was, what do you mean, simple conservative morality? Are you saying that's conservative morality? I think it's more like a celebration of the human spirit and our ability to connect and heal each other. You're going to claim that is conservative. Oh, well, boy, that says a lot about the left.
Yeah, it's just, I think they were triggered because in the old interview, Stallone used the word morality, and I couldn't think of anything else that made sense because I've watched that interview like a number of times.
Well,
I thought it was really great, but
they think morality is and I think Christians, certain denominations of Christians are to blame for this. They probably associate morality with self-righteous judgmentalism and condemnation, whereas to be honest, like Christian morality, I mean, Jesus was pretty clear, don't be self-righteous, and the first of these is love. So you're not supposed to judge people unless you can love them first, period. That's Christian morality. And I'm not saying that some Christians haven't earned their bad reputation, but consider that most of the civil rights movement was driven by Christian sentiment.
Yeah.
Not atheistic. Like they wanted to end, and also the abolitionist movement. It was Christian groups that drove the abolitionist and anti-segregationist movements, because a foundational concept in Christianity, which is absent in a lot of other religions and ethnic belief systems, is this idea that everyone is one in God, that we are all equal in God. So slavery is an abomination to Christianity. You can find, like in the Old South, like localized places where slavery became culturally entrenched, but in general, Christian nations are less likely to be slave owning nations. In fact, they're very unlikely. And part of it ties back to that idea that we are all one in God, which itself dovetails very nicely with the Enlightenment principles of humanism. And so there's a continuity in our narrative tradition that we're completely denying by just going morality. Yeah, well,
Oh
you
yeah,
know
for
what?
sure.
Morality isn't necessarily condemnation of people. Morality is also recognizing that broken people shouldn't be thrown away, and that they can do great things too if they get support, you know? And that itself is part of Christian morality. And I'm not a Christian. At least I don't think that other Christians or Christian people would define me as Christian, but I do recognize the value of the belief system, and also some places where it maybe missteps quite a bit, shall we say. But
Sure.
anyway,
All right. So,
let's go
anyways,
back to the topic.
yeah. So we got a little bit on a tangent about Rocky, but I don't mind because I could talk about that movie forever.
Yeah, it's a good
But
movie.
yeah, it is. And you know what? They're not as good as the first one, but all the rest of them are
Oh, I
also
have some thank yous.
pretty
Do you
good.
have
Oh,
any?
good. Yeah.
Do you
No,
have
no,
any?
no. You go ahead. I was hoping for that. Go ahead.
Yeah, and do you have any
Super
any
Chow,
people sending?
no super chats, no super.
Oh, okay. It's a quiet day. All right. So I want to thank Michael O for $500. Thank you, Michael O.
Thank you, Michael O.
Do
Very
you have
cool.
a sound?
I don't know if you're gonna be able to hear it.
Oh, that's okay. But Michael will be able to hear it if he's listening.
Yeah. Let's see. I'll do some corn pop, I guess. Wrong with that. You know.
And Corn Pop was a bad dude. And he ran a bunch of bad boys.
All right. Be on the
I
lookout.
still don't understand.
Who knows? I don't know the
Even
story,
means.
but
Okay, so thank you to Michael O, and Cam D gives us $5. So thank you, Cam D.
thank
Every
you.
bit
China.
helps. I know, I know you guys do whatever you can, so I appreciate it. And BJ, I'm just gonna say BJ because I'm not gonna give any more information. Gives us $10. Thank you, BJ. And once again, if you want to join our very generous supporters, please go to feedthebadger.com/project/badger-media-blitz. I really do appreciate it. Makes me feel a lot better to know that we are getting the funds in for the month. Or you can go to feedthebadger.com and follow the pop-ups. And let me see what we have left. So we need some music for waiting for the WordPress to actually respond to what I'm doing.
Sure.
We have
still viewed as chattel.
That's not music.
3,120 left for the month. Although thank you again for everyone for putting through something through today. And again, we got about 4 days left. So if you're listening to this afterwards, please go to feedthebadger.com/project/badger-media-blitz and put a few shekels in the hat. And yes, I should make something shorter that sends people to the link directly. But anyway, let's keep going.
All right. So let's look.
We were talking
at
about James Bond, right?
We're about to talk about James Bond, exactly. So let's look at this article from 22words.com. And this has been like reported in more places, but this is the one that I think was the first one. So it says the next James Bond will be more in touch with his feelings, producers say. All right. So
No, that's not the case.
first of all,
This is the yeah.
go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Well, it's not going to be in touch with his feelings. Like this, let's get rid of this bullshit entirely.
Yeah.
This is not what this is going to be. This is going to be in line with the feminist orthodoxy that doesn't like the male identity. Which is, like I said, ironic because feminists will decry the desires of the average woman. Meanwhile, they're going and indulging exactly the same desires in private. It's almost like, you don't want that delicious fudge cake. You just want to give it all to me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, all right, anyway, so it's not going to be his feelings because let's face it, in this orthodoxy, men are supposed to be able to cry, but they don't have anything that's legitimate for them to cry about.
Yeah.
Like, so what emotions is he going to be
Well,
allowed to express? You know?
yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess on other people's behalf, not himself. Like that those would be the like. So if a woman is killed, or if he learns that she's been raped or something, he has to like feel things based on her
Well,
feelings.
how is that different than forever in movies?
Well, absolutely, I agree.
I
I
mean,
mean,
like I've just recently looked at okay, what was this movie called? It was from 1956. It is Kubrick, I think, movie.
Stanley Kubrick.
And just yeah,
Well,
I believe so. It
okay.
was The Killing.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just double check all. Yeah. Let me
The
just double
Killing.
check it.
Okay.
Uh,
I
yeah, and so Harris Kubrick, not
so
Stanley.
okay, so not Stanley Kubrick.
But the main character, George, like he becomes apoplectic or he gets really upset when his wife is raped, which is exactly
Normal.
the way men have been
Yeah.
throughout all of human history.
Right.
Like, so what's really infuriating is like feminists are like, yep, we make men care about women. No, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Men have always done that. Like,
And
it's ridiculous.
and also like um well, I don't know. Like I was just thinking that men uh like how could you tell a story where a man is more in touch with his feelings when there's like I don't know, there's like no precedent for it. Like there's nothing that suggests that he never was. So
Is James Bond gonna be like,
is it,
he has to do dangerous stuff and being like, you know what, this is really frightening.
yeah.
You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna not do this, and then I'm going to condemn all of the social pressure that's put me into this scenario. So he's like at the precipice of taking down, Mr. Goldfinger or whatever, and he's like, I shouldn't have to do this.
Yeah.
This is just me responding to social pressure to have toxic masculinity to judge myself based on my heroic actions, suck up my emotions in the process. In fact, what I should do is I should march right in there and I should say to the evil dude, you got this woman chained up, gonna torture and rape her. Go ahead. I'm gonna
Yeah.
put my emotions first.
Yeah.
You enjoy
Exactly.
that. I'm gonna go have a margarita and play and gamble. That's what I'm
Yeah.
going to do, because my expectations as a man to protect these women or protect society, those are toxic. And I'm not going to be, I don't want to be stoic. I'm going to respond to my fear and my desire not to be uncomforted by this expectation. And I'm going to go fuck off and do something else. Jeez.
I would watch the shit out of that movie.
Yeah, well, yeah, that would be James Bond, MGTOW hero.
Yeah. Yeah. The final chapter, because he's not going to get a mission
Final
anymore.
chapter where he just tells everyone
But
off. It's because,
yeah.
I spent my whole life being brave and strong and stoic for you fuckers. And what has it got me? Nothing.
Yeah,
I'm going to
exactly.
live for myself now. I'm not going to save any women. I don't care if they're going to be raped or tortured. Not my business. I'm going to go
Yep.
live for myself. I'm not going to tolerate your social pressure on me to be strong anymore. Is that the
Yep.
kind of James Bond we're talking about?
Well, I don't think this is what they have in mind, because obviously they still want him to serve, but
You want
like
to
they want
protect
him
women.
to, yeah, and protect women and everything, but they want him to do it a certain way. But I would watch that especially if he had given that whole speech, and the villain, with his cat is just sitting there looking like shocked at this, and then like some of the other men are like, you know what, he's got a point. Like, this henchman business, it just gets us killed, and I don't really see the point in doing this anymore. And they all just leave, and it's just the woman, and she's hanging there while the laser is slowly moving towards her, and you know. So yeah,
And then maybe
I would.
the evil guy is like,
Yeah. Oh, what am I doing?
I feel like Yeah, I've been
There's-
doing this because my wife just her desires for wealth are endless, and you know what? I'm just gonna march to her and tell her to go shove it, and they just
Exactly.
leave the woman, and she's just
Yeah.
hanging there. Hello. That's fucking hilarious. Someone needs to do that.
Yeah, somebody should make a sketch of that.
What men would do if women weren't pressuring them into doing all this shit.
Yeah, exactly. So, back to the article. So it says, after it was revealed the new James Bond will serve a king in the next movie, the makers have now revealed some interesting new information about the characters in future films. Clearly, and by the way, this is a pro-feminist website, I believe, so they're gonna probably like spin it their way. Clearly, cinema is moving to bigger and better things. The 007
clearly.
agent, so scroll down for the full story. The 007 agent dates all the way back to 1953 after a series of books were created and published by British author Ian Fleming. When he died in 1964, his legacy of work was recognized and was to be later adapted on the big screen, creating the James Bond that we all know and love to this day. The first of the films was Dr. No, which saw the late Sean Connery step into the shoes of James Bond. He played the role. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, like giving us the history lesson. I don't need that. Swooned. Unfortunately for any Craig fans, his time as the iconic character has come to an end. In No Time to Die, Craig's fifth and final movie as the superstar agent was released in 2021. Movie, come on, I hate these articles. They're just pictures. Many were strongly against so they were talking about changing his gender. A lot of people began pitching the idea that the next James Bond should be a woman. It is 2022 after all. But many were strongly against the idea of changing the gender of James Bond character after being such a significant figure for 6 decades, 60 years. Wow. Why not create your own story rather than jumping onto the shoulders and being compared to all those other male predecessors? Rachel Weisz, Craig's wife, said in a 2018 interview. Well, that's kind of cool. So Rachel Weisz
was the female Bond. Barbarella was the female Bond. They should do they should not do a remake of Barbarella because it would. I think
they
it would
did.
Be terrible.
I think they did, but nobody watched it like a while back. But yeah, I mean Barbarella was, but she was like, it was also very science fiction-y, wasn't it? She was in space.
In a certain value of science fiction-y, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean
it was she had she floated in some kind of space capsule.
Yeah. I liked Barbarella, like even just as an idea, like if you set aside all the sexy stuff and it still could be a lot of fun. It's basically like the science fiction space girl, right? With the ray gun. I mean, that's a very classic image. So I guess what I want to say about this before I get deeper into this god awful article is that every time, what I've noticed, every time a James Bond like leaves, so like they usually make a couple of movies and then they retire the character, and every time they do, I think there's a conversation about whether or not James Bond should be more feminine friendly, less misogynistic, played by a woman, played by a minority, or if he should be like more, I think less toxically masculine. And they do it every time. Like they this conversation comes up whenever somebody quits. So like, Daniel Craig just quit, and now we're there's like the media is coming out and they're like, we need a more sensitive Bond, a less toxic.
I thought Daniel Craig was the more sensitive Bond. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, they said that back then, and in a lot of ways, he's kind of like a simp Bond in his movies. Like they kind of like over, because like he gets like, it's not that Bond doesn't get attached, because he does. Like the George Lazenby Bond movie, which is he only did one, right? Like his lover is killed in at the end, and he's like totally heartbroken by that, and even though like none of the Bond movies are really meant to be like linked together by some, like it's all one continuous story. A lot of times they just don't do it that way. So you have to think of them as serials or like separate adventures that are meant to be timeless. You're not supposed to say, like you're not supposed to treat it like a one canon thing because it just doesn't work, right? So yeah. So what you instead you treat all the stories as individual, and it probably will be because it's going to be different writers, different directors, and sometimes different actors. And what they should be trying to do is grasp at the essence of what is a Bond movie, because that's what people want to watch. Like if you want to watch like Bourne Identity, then you watch the Bourne movies. You don't watch James Bond because they're different, even though they're both about like espionage and intrigue and spycraft and shit. They're not the same in terms of their tone. It's like Mission Impossible. Those movies are about massive set pieces, gigantic stunts, Tom Cruise on the side of a building, Tom Cruise hanging out on an airplane, whatever it is. And James Bond could do that, but that's not what it is. It's like there's a specific essence that you're supposed to be aiming for. And I think the only reason why these people come out and criticize these is because it's such a long-lasting, extremely popular like franchise, right? And it stars a man, and that's just like, it must drive them crazy. Like, we have to do something about this, right? They threatened to, or claimed to have replaced Bond with a woman in the last film, and again, like, nobody wants that. Like, nobody wants it, and it's not because they hate women. But of course, that's the narrative. No,
like seriously, I wish that we would get rid of this hatred of women aspect of the discourse, because men who genuinely hate women are so rare. I mean, I don't even think men who have antisocial personality disorder generally even hate women. Like this is so rare. It's like we're finding the one guy in the world who hates women, and we're basing policy and how we treat every other man on him, on his existence. And honestly, this guy who hates women, what does he probably do? He probably just lives by himself and just, whatever. He's probably not doing anything offensive to anyone. Yeah. So just get rid of it. Like it is a pointless statement. It's a pointless, empty statement. Men do not hate women. No man in all of human history hates women. This is not a common sentiment. It is perishingly small. And it is especially not common when you consider the prevalence of the reverse. How many women seem to despise men? And I think actually maybe we should take a look at that and stop pretending like men's hatred of women is some kind of social force. It isn't. It is non-existent. It is certainly not a movement. It has no influence on society. It has no influence on history. It is a complete and utter red herring. And when people bring it up, you should automatically know that they're lying about something.
Yep.
Because the only reason to bring that up is to turn people's brains off and put them into a feral state of, we got to protect the women. Something's wrong. Something's happening to the women. We got to protect them. Well, how you protect the women. Slit open your wallet. Give everything, all of the contents to me, and I will tell you exactly the steps you need to take. And it's ridiculous. That's the only reason that this phrase, the only reason for it to exist, is to turn people's brains off and hit all of their buttons at once so that they become controllable.
Yep.
That's it.
That's it.
Because it has no actual realistic real world existence. Like, it doesn't, the phenomenon of massive amounts of men hating women doesn't exist. I don't even think incels hate women.
No, I don't think they do.
They probably say that. You know why they say that? Because it's the only way they can get attention, for exactly the same reason that feminists say that people hate women, because feminists want to get attention and power. Incels say it because they want to get attention, to actually have people pay attention to them. And then what do people do? They pay attention to them. And it's the only way that incels get attention. And if that's, if you're going to encourage that dynamic, it's going to continue to infinity. If the only way that incels can get attention is by expressing supposedly hateful things about women, guess what they're going to do? If the only way a dog can get attention is by biting you, what do you think it's going to do? Well, maybe it won't, but think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, the analogy sort of falls down, but it's essentially, okay. Anyway, this is a very, very long digression. Let's get back to the.
No, it's okay. Okay.
So
no, the article's trash. I found another one.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna put it on the. That was wrong. Sorry about that. And
stop choking your damn articles with freaking images.
Choking?
Like, if you're gonna write, then write.
Oh, I know. They don't even write. They just show endless images, and then I can't back out. So Bounding into Comics did this, and they're essentially saying James Bond franchise producers say future films will further explore Super Spy's emotional side. Bond is evolving just as men are evolving. So this is the thing that about this that really pissed me off, is that they're essentially suggesting that men are starting to evolve. So we're not cave people anymore, and because and how they define evolution is men being, I guess, emotional, which I don't even think that they've ever cared to pay attention to, because men haven't actually changed that much, if at all, right? And they certainly I don't think that they've become so emotional that the people who are writing this be like, oh, I think men are actually starting to turn into human beings, and they're no longer cave people, that we can't talk to, and because they just want to watch their Bond movies with their explosions and their banging and whatnot, even though, again,
that's so simplistic.
It is, but I mean, this is when you say men are starting to evolve, and then you try and turn that into a compliment, it just comes across as a slap in the face. And men should be angry about that.
Talk about men's emotions.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So, according to the half-sibling production team currently at the helm of James Bond franchise, the focus placed on the iconic British super spy's more emotional and vulnerable sides in his last outing, No Time to Die, which this is what Daniel Craig was from the beginning. That's what I mean when I say they said this already, because after Pierce Brosnan's...
the Eternal Revolution.
Yeah, after Pierce Brosnan's run ended...
Who was also supposed to be the more sensitive Bond.
Yes, he was, because there were at least, a few movies that did that. Even GoldenEye, which is the best Daniel Craig James Bond movie ever. But, even in that one, where it was essentially his first film, and he was really trying to do the Bond thing, in terms of his attitude and stuff, and I think he nailed it. He felt I don't know, a cross between Connery and Dalton in a way, and just a little bit of the silliness of Moore, but not that much. And but they also added some emotional things. So the woman, the Russian hacker chick that he rescues, and by the way, almost all since the beginning of these movies, there's always been a capable woman, in all of them. There might have been the occasional bimbo, normie woman, but they weren't usually in the scene long. I think there's the one bit in, I want to say it's Goldfinger, where there's a girl and she's sunbathing with James, and the CIA guy shows up, or the guy who gives him his mission or info or whatever. And he says to the girl, because she's asking questions, and he doesn't want her to know what he does, so he tells her that she has to leave because men are talking, and he slaps her on the behind, and then she runs off. But it's funny because that look, it's essentially because later in the same movie he runs into Pussy Galore, who's actually pretty capable despite her silly name. And I think that she actually, because she works for the villain, right? So she's like a femme
She's
fatale.
if I'm thinking of the right movie, that she's actually part of like a female
Yeah,
squadron.
she's like a leader of a female squadron of pilots, and exactly that's Pussy Galore. And so, but she's the one that he really falls for because she is
Mm-hmm.
capable. So like
Mm-hmm.
there's the bimbo that doesn't really have much to offer, and he treats her like, I guess you could say,
A
proportionately.
bimbo.
Yeah, treats her like a bimbo. And then later he meets a formidable woman, and that's what he gets drawn to. So like,
And I actually wanted to say something about that. How much is left of the article?
it's okay. We don't have to read through the whole thing. So what were you
Okay,
gonna
then let's
say?
not, because they're a pain in the ass. The first movie, what I noticed about it is that James Bond, his greatest success is seducing Pussy Galore.
Yeah,
And he does so from a situation of being a captive. So I'm pretty sure at
yeah,
any moment she could have killed him,
yeah.
or called for the guards and had him killed.
He
So
didn't
he
want to.
does so. Yeah, she has all the power in the situation, and he manages to give it to her so good that she changes her allegiance. And I think
Yeah.
that's what really pisses off, that got James Bond franchise eternally listed as sexist. And the funny thing is that that is the only thing in that scenario that James had going for him, because he kept flubbing up constantly. So
Mm-hmm.
it was like he was on his Hail Mary, which is like, okay, I gotta seduce this woman who holds all the cards and actually get her to do a heel, like a heel face turn or face heel turn to my
Mm-hmm.
side, through the powers of seduction. And I'm like, that is the female role in a lot, like that's the
Yeah,
classic.
that's
He's
usually what women
playing the
do.
femme fatale. He's
Yep.
playing the femme fatale for Pussy Galore.
Hmm.
She's playing the temptation to 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 leave her current allegiance and do something potentially dangerous for her to
Hmm.
do, and all because of his sexual allure. And it's like, okay, that seems a bit subversive, don't you think?
Yeah.
And
Well, I think it is. I think it's very subversive.
but of
That
course they
again.
can't stand that thought, because
Yeah.
again, I think what feminism, a good portion of feminism, is just contempt for women's desire.
Yeah.
And the
Really.
possibility, yeah, the possibility that women could be influenced by their desire for men in any capacity, you know
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I mean, look at the shit that they say. It all seems to revolve, much of it seems to revolve around this condemnation of what women find attractive in men, and the possibility, like, look at the statements: handmaiden, pick me,
Mm-hmm.
um cool girl, whatever. The women's desire to be desirable to men, and to want and to desire men, and desire their interest in anything. And
Yeah.
it's really exhausting, because it takes out all of the joy of being human in a lot of
That's
ways.
true. No, I mean that's what I was thinking. Uh, that was very. It is very frustrating because when I watched, like, I was watching some old James Bond movies, and you see, like, I'm paying attention to the way that they wrote characters and how they interact, and like so
Mm-hmm.
much of it, I was like, you can't do this today.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it was harmless and in fact really endearing, like you feel like, oh yeah, I like that. Like it it I don't know, it shows
It's too
people
positive.
as it. Well, it is. It's optimistic, but it also shows people as human. So it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like they had a better understanding of human connection,
Oh
of
yeah,
human like sexuality, of human like
that's the
affection.
funny thing,
Those are the
is
things that are
that,
all gone.
yeah, that, like, we're losing all that. Like, they are people generations ago had a better understanding of how men and women connect and express themselves
Yep.
than we do today.
Yep.
We have we Our understanding is becoming less nuanced,
Mm,
less kind, less optimistic, less joyful, less forgiving. more cruel,
Mhm.
more mechanistic, more primitive.
Are you there? Fuck. Hello?
How much of my rant did you miss?
Just the last. Let me just make
Did
sure that
you
this is
I
still
was
working.
ranting about gender fluid individuals not being gender fluid in the slightest.
Oh yeah, sure. No, I missed that part. Sorry about that. I think we're
Did
still
you
live though, so I just
did you hear about the part that we're regressing in our understanding of gender?
yes, I did hear
Yeah,
that part.
we're regressing. And what really gets me is these gender fluid individuals aren't. They are feminine, self-righteous feminine individuals who believe that there is nothing but themselves. There's no outlook, there's no perspective, there's no emotional qualities that exist except for the feminine.
Yep.
And it's actually, they aren't gender fluid, they're unipolar. Like they only recognize one pole and that's it. And they call that gender fluidity. It is actually what is a good word for it? It is gender rigidity is what they have.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually really freaking hilarious because we are
Yeah.
indeed going backwards when it comes to our understanding of each other as men and women. And it's sad because it's joyless and coarse and violent and cruel and mean spirited and very, very lacking in self-awareness and
Yeah.
forgiveness. Like
Cold.
that's what really gets me is that we are going backwards when it comes to being aware of ourselves and aware
Mm-hmm.
of what drives us and having any kind of ability to control it or manage it or forgive it or enjoy it. And it's just like everything is becoming coarser. If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Well, that's why I like I said, I try to remind myself, well, of how humans actually, act. So
Yes.
I got a
Good
couple.
good.
Yeah, I got a couple super chows.
Mm.
Zapier, so basically anonymous, gave us $20 and didn't write anything. So I hope that that's what you meant to do. Appreciate the donation regardless.
Mm.
If you meant to send a message with that, I guess you can try tagging me in the live chat here at Badger Live Streams, and if I see it, I'll read it out. And then Amasang gives us $5 and says, "Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't James Bond married in one of the older films, and then his wife was murdered in the end, which affected him?" Yes, that was George Lazenby, who is the Bond that only did one movie on Her Majesty's Secret Service, and I believe that she is killed. Um, Essentially because of him. And so, because of the work that he does, he had like assassins, I think, after him, and they killed her. And yeah, it was a tragic end. It's actually how the movie ends, I believe, which is on a tragic note. And we're talking about what, the second guy to play Bond? So, none of this is like, look, what these people are claiming is not new. And anyone who like why, and that's the thing that really pisses me off, because the only thing that could actually result in is making the characters in the stories less interesting, because they're not going to make him more human. They're going to make him like less human, really, because he's not going to be acting in a natural way. He's going to be acting in a way that they think men should act. And so yeah, even though, again, all the Bonds, maybe not Timothy Dalton, because he was just too much of a hard ass, but like most of the Bonds, they were all like subjected to the same rhetoric, where they were like, we need him to be more sensitive, we need him to be more, like a woman, basically. And it was like, these are people who don't even watch these things.
Are you kidding? Would a woman like would a woman even consider extending herself out to understand a man's perspective? I mean, in a lot of cases.
Yeah. No.
Or protecting a man, I mean, maybe Pussy Galore did. I don't know, because she eventually did that heel face turn for apparently.
Well, yeah, there's a number of women that have done that, although not all of them.
Okay.
And I think it's mainly because, again, they start off as an enemy. He seduces them. I'm just being really general here, and then they end up really liking each other. In some cases, in many cases, and it's just part of the story. It's basically like he kind of pulls them from the
evil.
Yeah, pulls them away from evil.
And what's wrong with that? That's
No-
actually sort of heartening about human
Yeah.
sexuality. That's actually sort of a positive message about human sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
It you make that human connection and you start to care about more than just coarse and mean-spirited shit.
Yeah.
And how much your paycheck is at the end of the day. And I guess the feminists don't like that. There's one person who spent through a super chow, but it seems to have got stuck in the pipe.
I got a message I was tagged in, so I could only assume that.
Oh wait, here it goes. There it went. It just went through the pipe. Yes.
I don't see it.
I know. It's what are you? What's
I don't
going
see
on
it in the Discord. I don't know if the bots got it.
I can take a look in.
Well, I got this. Somebody tagged me in a post, and I think they might be the person who sent. Oh, I did. Get the
there it
super
goes.
chat.
There it goes.
Just went through. Yeah. They might be the person that sent me the $20 before. So Assassin of the Gray says, after Contessa Teresa Tracy DiVincenzo was murdered by Ernest Blofeld at the end of On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Bond never let himself become that vulnerable again. Yeah, I understand that was the reasoning behind it, and I think that's good because it does. Again, it connects to that. So, but then they kind of do it over and over, which is fine, but because again, it gives the character maybe a different arc, like the ability to, let women get close to him again or something like that. That's something that I'm okay with writing about for men,
Yeah. But it does sort of take away from the original why he became so distant or more distant is because he had this tragic event happen. Okay, the super chat went through. Again, I just want to remind everyone we are doing our fundraiser, feedthebadger.com/project/badger-media-blitz. I think we can do this super chow and then
wrap it up. That's fine by me. So Rorschach's No gives us $20. Thank you, Rorschach's No, and says, "Hey Badgers, I wonder when we get a non-Hollywood infestation readaptation of the multi-million-dollar Man, but in a free-range, Wild West-like Road Warrior survival-style world, where he tries to logic his way before he's disappointed that he has to break out the plasma beam finger guns." That all sounds very cool to me. Like,
there's a lot of mishmash genres.
There's a mix of genres, but I think it can be pulled off. But like something like that, I think that could be a lot of fun. You know what it reminds me of? There aren't a lot of directors or people that are showrunners or whatever that will take these kinds of risks. And the funny thing is that back in the 60s and 50s, you just didn't have the budget to do that. So they would, in order to save money, contain like their stories to things that take place in the modern time. So there'd be stories about FBI agents or cops or detectives, that are basically solving cases, which was super popular, in particular with men. Or there could be the occasional spy story or CIA or FBI thing. Or they'll do westerns. And with the westerns, like again, they would just use the same sets and and that was another genre that men really liked because they liked the idea of living. First of all, it is an American thing, so I don't want to speak for people from other countries that didn't like westerns, but it's definitely an American thing. But it was basically like people living on the edge of civilization, like on the perimeter, and they're dealing with the kinds of issues you might deal with, whether it's natives or criminals or whatever, right? Raising a family. And men like to watch that stuff, but I think that those like wild kind of mixed genre things, like those can work if the person creating it is talented, but there aren't a lot of people that can do that. but a couple who come to
No.
mind is I guess I know that Joss Whedon, he's a feminist and all, but I know people who really enjoyed what was the show that he did that was like a
Firefly?
yeah, Firefly, right? And I also think of guys like Sam Raimi who gave us, and I think that he should probably get out of like big budget Hollywood. They've just been fucking him over. But he gave us like, Xena and Hercules, which he just made the most out of, and those shows ran forever, especially Xena. Holy shit, that was huge. My mom watched that every weekend. She loved that show. But also he gave us Briscoe County Jr., which that sounds like something that could be.
You know what's
like,
interesting?
What?
I never remember anyone complaining about Xena
No,
being a woman.
no, I don't. No. And again, I don't think it was trying to be feminist.
No,
Like,
it's just trying to tell a story.
Yeah, I don't think it was. I think that the fact that it's a woman in the story, you're probably inevitably going to run into some character that's going to be like, oh, it's just a woman, and then she kicks his ass, But like, in general, I don't think it was like a misandric show, and I know my mom was a huge fan, but it was basically because, and that's the thing, she wanted to see the action. That was why she watched it. One of her favorite shows from the 80s was a cop show called Hunter, and it was basically this male cop, and his female partner, and they were stopping crimes and arresting perps and stuff, and there was like gunfights in every episode. Now, and I mean like Hollywood style gunfights with explosions and shit breaking and like famous stuntmen getting killed that you recognize, like that Asian guy, the guy I'm talking about. We used to call him Kung Fu Louie. He had like the long dark hair and the beard, and he always played like thugs and goons, and he was in like probably every episode of that. But the thing that's funny about it is that my mom wasn't looking for a sensitive male character. She wanted to see like this guy that was going to kick some ass, right? And doing it for the right reason. And so I always thought that was funny because I'm told that women don't like that.
It's bullshit.
But my mom doesn't care for the kind of like soap opera storytelling that is so common today.
Well, the thing is that, like you said, for the right reasons, there is an element of male altruism that's really unique to men, which is called, let's see, altruistic punishment, which is that men will sacrifice to punish people who transgress the social norms of the group. And they will go through dangerous situations. They'll lose potential, they'll put their lives in risk, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to protect the group from malfeasance. And, it's an attractive quality in men. And I can see that women would want to watch that and enjoy it because they have the instincts to do so. Because that's what's freaking hilarious. We live in a society now. I know that there's a lot of condemnation of men wanting to see I keep going back to this, but like the bikini contests. But this is sort of bikini contests for women, and yet feminists are constantly getting on our case about how all that's toxic masculinity. You're not allowed to like it. Well, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like, why can't we enjoy watching men do what men do? Why can't we acknowledge it? And why can't we recognize it as a positive and something enjoyable, to see and to celebrate and not in a way that makes men feel like they are obligated to do it, but something that we recognize that men are inclined to do. And it's part of being masculine. Okay. If that makes any sense, because I don't want to get into this scenario where men are like that idea that they are obligated, that men are obligated to grant to society the benefits of their masculine instincts and perspective and how they express themselves and etc. I don't want to get into that, but
no, I hear you.
Sometimes you want to be able to celebrate that, and also recognize that maybe women should have the right to desire it.
Mm-hmm.
Feminists, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like, get your boot off our throat, please. Um,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're just the anti-fun police, and
yes.
they are, and it always comes down to like we don't like what you guys like because we think that it's, you know, for whatever reason it's bad for us, and so you should stop. And that's basically all this is. Like we need to cancel somebody wants to make a Conan show. Well, that's not allowed. So like let's get them fired, and then we'll take over, and then we'll declare this toxically masculine.
I did find an article on Forbes that talked about Rings of Power and admitted that the writing is trash.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, us racists, like me and Brian,
been saying that.
Yeah, massive racists. We knew that from the beginning because we weren't hoodwinked by the bullshit about diversity.
Yeah, the narrative that you're using to essentially guard yourself from criticism when all you had to do was actually like get good people to write a good story, and then none of this would have happened. That's
actually difficult. You know, a lot of people think that storytelling is easy. It is not easy. It is one of the most intractably difficult skills to master. And what's happening is you've got a bunch of hacks who have no ability to tell stories, who essentially shove a whole bunch of crap. They hide behind diversity initiatives. They hide behind them to avoid criticism, like Brian was saying.
Yeah, that's all it is.
That's all it is. It's
because
they don't using self-righteousness to hide your cowardice and incompetence.
And the worst part is, if they can't do it themselves, they can probably find very, you know, capable, competent and talented people to help them. But they want to be the only, it seems that they want to be the ones, so they're just going to write something half-ass because they can't do it. And they another reason why they can't do it is because I think that telling a really good story requires you to tell a truth about, it doesn't have to be a fact, it just needs to be the truth. Like your story should say something that is true, you know, in the Aristotelian way, I guess you could say. And they can't, because they want to tell that what they want to do is tell us the world not as it is, which is, you know, what usually is a good baseline for telling a good story, but as they think it should be. And so because that's why they always have like female characters showing male characters up, you know, and they're always flexing on them, and they're always girl bossing, because they're basically just trying to satisfy their own ego. But they don't understand women or men, right? Or reality. And so it all just sort of like exists to follow. Yeah, it all exists to sort of bend around what they want to feel. And so
storytelling, sorry to interrupt,
but
right. Storytelling, I mean, you can, like, I do that in my story. There's a specific thing I want to present, the way I want the world to be. But the way that you do that in storytelling is you don't do it, if that makes sense. What you do is you let your characters, your situation, your plots come out of that passion and and what you want to see. You don't ever tell your reader what to think. You just you write it in such a way that the conclusion becomes inevitable from the plot and the characters that you've constructed. And I don't know how to explain it, because it's almost like on the level of the intuitive, but you never polemicize. You never give like characters speeches. You never force your message out at all, ever. Like never do you make it so that the message, you never string two sentences together that could be construed as your message. So you do take it out and you be like, this is you never do that.
Right.
If that makes any sense. But you can actually convey like theme and beliefs and passions without ever explicitly stating them, is what I'm getting at. And you never should explicitly state them. And you should never even explicitly state them in obvious and hackneyed characters either.
Yeah.
So it's like you can do that, but you have to really be a good storyteller. And I don't think these individuals think that storytelling is a craft that they need to master, and because of that, their stories are crap.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like they're just using it for a kind of like social engineering, and it's really obvious to everyone. And there's no, it's just like a sermon, and there's nothing of any like narrative value.
Or even when it's not a sermon, like when they are trying to convey something, they don't have the narrative chops to construct a story that's worth watching.
Mm-hmm.
And it's even when it's not a sermon. That's the real big problem in all of this. It's literally people are pissed because we have hacks who cannot write. And even the word hack isn't good and doesn't convey this, because hacks often become hacks because they did write a really good story. And then they just repeat that structure over and over and over again to the point of soullessness. These people never wrote a good story. Never.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what story is. And like I said, story is one of the hardest crafts to master. And one of the reasons why is because when you write a story, you are so close. It's really simple. When you write a story, you can never read it. You can never have the experience of a reader.
Yeah.
So you're having this experience in your head, and you can't step back and see what the experience is for the reader because you are the writer. And that gap is extremely difficult to bridge. And people who have a simplistic understanding of human morality, that have absolutely no nuance, that can't extend themselves to understand the minds of others, there is no goddamn way they are even going to come close to understanding or contemplating or being able to handle that gap. I read a book called, I think it's Lisa Crone, I believe is her name, and it's called Wired for Story. And she mentioned that storytellers have, and I think this is verified through studies, they have the ability to do at least one recursive level greater than the average audience member. And to explain what that means is, recursion is, I'll use an example like from Sherlock Holmes. All right, so one level is Watson noticed, or sorry, Holmes noticed the clue. Okay. Then the next level of recursion is Watson saw Sherlock noticing the clue. And then another level of recursion is she read that Watson saw that Sherlock noticed the clue. And then you can go further and further and further. The average complicated story requires an audience that's capable of doing 4 levels of recursion. Like the average Marvel movie probably just requires like, maybe 2 levels of recursion. Yeah. But when you're talking about a complicated story, like maybe Rocky, you probably are going to need 4 levels of recursion, if not more, because you are trying to keep in your head Rocky's attitude towards something, Adrian's attitude towards Rocky, Paulie's attitude towards Adrian's attitude towards Rocky, Apollo's attitude towards blah blah. See the levels of recursion. That's what you have to keep in your head to really understand Rocky, which is probably why that one person was like, it's so simple. No, you are. And to be an author, not only do you have to keep usually 5 levels of recursion in your mind, which will strain the average intelligent audience member of a movie like Rocky, you have to keep another level of recursion in your head, which is how is the reader experiencing all of this?
Right.
And that talent is rare. And it is extremely, and not just rare, it's also something that needs to be progressively developed. And you cannot be a social justice warrior and develop that talent, because you'll notice that what they do is they reject every perspective that isn't their own. So they are anti that talent. They are anti the talent of recursion, which is the most essential talent that an author needs to have, which is the ability to model people's minds on multiple levels. And the better the author, the further up the recursive tree they can get. You want a really, really good author, they're at like 9, 10 levels of recursion.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got masterpieces. Whereas these people, the wokies, they can't even handle one level of recursion, which is somebody else's mind, but who thinks differently than me. Well, anybody who thinks differently than me is a Nazi, Satan, whore monster that should be destroyed. I don't understand. Like that shouldn't happen. That shouldn't exist. Like they are literally on one level of recursion, which is their own thoughts.
Yeah.
And it exclude everything else. So by definition, their mentality is anti-narrative.
Yep.
Which is why everything they write is crap. Even when it's not a sermon, even when it's not in a diversity initiative, their very mentation is so primitive and so lacking in complexity or nuance that they cannot write story. They can't even comprehend it. That's why they can watch a movie like Rocky, where the average, requires these levels of coercion to understand, and they can say, well, that doesn't make sense to me, therefore it's simple.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're just stupid.
Yeah.
And self-righteous about your stupidity.
Yep.
And you discovered a hack. You can say everybody else is a racist. I'm not stupid. Everyone else is a racist.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like
Sorry.
a child. No, it's all right.
Yeah, it is like a child.
Mm-hmm. Someone in the chat had asked a couple times about us watching and doing a review or analysis of Don't Worry, Darling. And look, it's not, I don't think it's out like on streaming. I think it's only available in theaters.
No, it is, I'm pretty sure.
Is it? I'll have to look into it, but it's not available. I think it's, I only, here's what I know. People who have seen it went to the theater to see it. So I don't want to go to the theater and give them my money. But like maybe once it's out, we could try and watch it. But
once it's out, we'll see if we can burn it, like swipe it from. I shouldn't say that.
Once
it's out,
it from somewhere, and we'll look at it.
We might go to the citrus wire and see if we can acquire it.
And we'll see. I mean, I don't think there's gonna be much to say about it because
let me say
everything I've read about it it's so predictable.
Like
it's the same thing. It's like they only know one way of telling this story about men. So
that's exactly it. I mean, when I read about Don't Worry, Darling, I'm like, this is once again anti-narrative, because these are women who refuse to acknowledge that there is a recursion level of, above women or outside of women. Like you have women's perception of men's perception of women. They can't go there without only seeing how women perceive men. Like, so there's absolutely nothing about how men perceive women in Don't Worry, Darling. Nothing.
Yeah.
It's all based on women's perception, and it's always negative perception of men's intentions. Hugely negative, and it's because the woman, Olivia, I think Wilde, probably physically incapable, doesn't have the smarts to actually understand a mind that it doesn't relate to. Like, men do have their own way of thinking, their own way of expressing, their own way of processing things, their own sort of logic. And Olivia is too stupid to be able to model it.
Yep.
And so we get to watch 2 hours of someone who is incapable of doing the recursion necessary to create a narrative. It's like, okay, yeah, I guess we can do that.
Well,
it's not gonna
I'll
be
look
fun.
into it. It's not going to be fun. But I'll look into it.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure as hell not going to pay for the privilege.
No. And we'll get back to you, because I do have a number of thoughts on it already, but I think I'd rather be informed like by having watched it. Okay. So thank you for those comments. I think that we're probably about ready to quit here. I'm just saying, like, yeah. So what do you have any Last minute
Okay.
thank yous.
All
or
right. So
anything
once
like
again,
that?
we're doing our fundraiser, feedthebadger.com/project/badger dash you feedthebadger.com/projects/badger dash media dash blitz, or you can go to feedthebadger.com and follow the pop-ups. Any amount helps. So don't think if you got $5, that is really appreciated. I know that you all of you who help us out do what you can. So it's that you do what you can that matters. So please do at feedthebadger.com. I think that our message is very unique. We look at these issues from a very deep dive perspective. And I think that a lot of people don't do that. I think a lot of people on YouTube in particular just get stuck into this loop of just pointing out the problem over and over and over and over again without really looking at why the problem exists and what the potential solutions can be, or even recognizing that society is an expression of how men and women come together to create societies. Our instincts come together to construct a social landscape. And if there's a problem in society, there's a problem between men and women. So that's where the solution needs to start.
Yep.
I think that's a message that almost nobody talks about at all. I you know what? Correct me in the comments below, but I think that we are it for people who talk about that. So if you would like to support that message, go to feedthebadger.com/project/badger-media-blitz. And back to you, Brian.
All right. So if you guys like this video, please smash like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications. Let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the comments below. And most importantly, please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of Red Chill Cinema, and we will talk to you all. Oh, it's okay. You're like the grandma from Beverly Hillbillies. Yeah. And I will talk to you all in the next video.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.